Frank, pleasure meeting you. Congratulations on this fight that you have coming up next week. I know it's been a little bit of a journey with the previous delay. I wanted to ask you this to start off. You know the fact that you had that big knockout against Duno. Now you're on everybody's radar. Before you were kind of like a best kept secret. How has it been adjusting to that new media attention, new fan attention? How's it been for you so far over the last, let's say, 6 months?
I would say it's the same, just like the following and stuff going up. But I would say it's really the same. It ain't like no type of pressure or nothing. It's more motivating for me. Gotta gotta keep pushing.
Got it, got it. Now on the fighter end, the fact that you're making all this big noise, now do you think it's going to be harder to get some of these fights now? Because now it's going to be a situation where it's like, okay, now we know what he's capable of. Now it's more of a kind of a high risk thing to get in there with him at this point. Do you feel it's going to be harder as you move up the ladder to get some of those guys in the ring now that they know what you can do?
Yeah, if I keep putting on, dominant performances, I believe so. Guys gonna be like you know, that guy high risk, low reward. So until I get to that spot of being able to get those fights, that's what I feel that they're gonna say. A lot of them will say.
Now, one thing that I think surprises a lot of people about you when they hear that you started boxing so late at 18, a lot of the stereotype or the narrative that you would hear is that people who started late, they're not as fluid in the ring, they're not as natural as people who started when they were in their adolescence. But we don't see that with you. I wanted to know in the ring, do you feel that difference when you're fighting those experienced guys, or do you feel like you're right at home with them and you don't feel any difference, or that they're on a different level than you experience-wise?
In the beginning, I did feel that, and it was more I would go in and just fight. I'd be like, some of these guys got more experience, and I would just get in and just fight just with my off my natural abilities. Now it's a little different, I got great coaching, I got a lot better coaching, so now I can get in there with any of those guys and feel all right, and even before that, I was still able to get in there with any of the guys, but now it's just a little different. My I've always been a pretty smart fighter, but now my IQ is like even better, and it's gonna continue to get better since I've been working with Derrick James. So he bringing out a lot of my tools, and I understand a lot of why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Got it. And speaking of Derrick James, I know one thing that he's big on is that he always makes sure that his fighters kind of have the toughness that he showed in the ring. One of the things that he mentioned as far as building that ability to withstand adversity is even the gym that you fight in, like the temperature is always like over 100 degrees. So that's one way we know to get you ready for those tough moments. What's another way that you can give me that he kind of strengthens you guys mentally, you and Spence, to be able to get in there and do what you guys do?
And like nothing is like it don't matter how sharp you is in there or whatever in the sparring or in the training. Like it's always he makes sure like we don't get too like up on what we did in sparring or whatever it may be. So he kind of keep us grounded and just continuously getting better. Some guys do good and they get complacent and comfortable. So he kind of the way we train and stuff, we always learning something. So he kind of make it uncomfortable at times. Even sparring in that heat and things like that is just it's uncomfortable. It's an uncomfortable environment sometimes. So being able to overcome that and even on the mitts, the little things that he do on the mitts is challenging too. So he do all of that stuff just to keep us mentally sharp and aware.
Now, one thing I've noticed with you that's very underrated, we know the left hand is powerful, but you had a really good sneaky combination you've used, which is like the double jab, and then you come with like a sweeping left hook. People are expecting the left right down the middle, and you whip it around, and you've gotten a lot of knockdowns off of that. What would you say is your most underrated punch? Because we know everybody with a southpaw, they always know the left hand is coming. What do you think is your most underrated punch or combination that people kind of overlook when they're evaluating you?
Uh, my my little stabs when I'm in the clinches. When I'm
Okay.
in the clinches and stuff, and I'm doing like it may be a short shot, but like if I hit somebody in the body or something, like those shots right there are like guys in when they're in that ring, they feel it.
Got it. Got it.
It
Now let's
may
talk.
not look, but
Go ahead. You said it may not look like it's doing much, but
It
it,
may not look effective, but like I'm very good at like stabbing it to a point where like they feel it.
I see. I see. So let's talk about your opponent, Ricardo Nunez. He's on a bit of a win streak right now. And the interesting thing I feel is that because people are going to look at his last loss, and it came years ago against Gervonta Davis, and being that he's the big star now, it feels like automatically your performance is going to be evaluated against his performance, even though this was years ago. The fact that you guys are in the same division. The fact that I think you're top 15 in WBA, he has a secondary WBA title. Do you feel that you guys are still kind of on the same pathway where this could possibly happen a year or two down the line? Or do you feel you're just in two different directions where your career is and where his career is going?
I feel that though that fight can happen, you know, in a year, 2 years. You know, I do believe that that fight can happen down the line. You know, we got the same opponents and stuff, so I feel like that definitely can happen.
Kind of glad to hear that. Now let's talk about your upbringing a little bit. From what I heard, that you split between going to Detroit and then going to Fort Wayne. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so that's very interesting because we know the boxing legacy is huge in Detroit, not so much in Fort Wayne. Was there any difficulty when you were coming up as far as being able to stick with boxing? Because it seems like you're only going to be getting in on one end and not on the other end. And some people would just kind of gravitate towards something that would be easier, like football or or basketball. What made you be able to stick with boxing even with that split in your upbringing?
So I actually started fighting. I started boxing late. I started fighting at 18. So around the time when I was back and forth, I was only playing football and wrestling. And
Okay.
I come from a football. My family got a football background, and wrestling was like my main sport. Football, I did pretty good too, but wrestling was like the main thing. But I got into boxing at 18, and I didn't start fighting out of Michigan. You know,
Mm,
I started
okay.
fighting out of when I first started. I was in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and then like I moved to Indy. I ended up moving to Indianapolis, and that's when I like actually started boxing. So I started fighting out of Indiana.
Got it, got it. Now we've heard about, football players getting into boxing doesn't always work out as well, but you mentioned you have the wrestling background. Does that help any in the ring as far as like with clinching and things and being able to, grapple with guys? Does that what wrestling background help any?
Yeah, because I got a strong I got a strong foundation. So a lot of times when I lock up with guys, like I pretty much know how to like move them a certain way or kind of like stop their hands from stop them from being able to land clean shots. So I would say that it helps.
Okay, okay. So let's talk about your nickname, the Ghost. We've had a few ghosts before in boxing, Kelly Pavlik, Robert Guerrero, but I wanted to get the background with yours because we know just in popular culture, we have a few, we got a few rappers that got that nickname. Where does your name come from and how did you get it?
Just coming out of that, when I first got to the amateurs, I went to the National Golden Gloves my first year going. I had fought the first fight at the National Golden Gloves. I had 12 fights, I think. Yeah, 12 fights, and then I had fought Abraham Nova. I fought Abraham
Okay.
Nova the first fight of the tournament, and I
Right.
had beat Abraham Nova. So like after I beat the guy, all the judges and stuff was just looking at me like crazy. They had like these like wild eyes, like they was like big eyes. So I'm like, damn, why everybody looking at me like this?
Mm,
And after I got out the ring, everybody was like, "You just beat the number one guy in the country." I'm like, "Oh, for real?" Because a lot of times when I was fighting in the amateurs, I didn't know who I was. I was new. I ain't
right.
really been around, so I was just going to fight. So once I beat them, people was coming up to me and stuff, and then it was that I was just beating some guys that people wasn't expecting me to beat, and me coming out of the blue, having so like not so many fights. And I had fought in the National Golden Gloves 2016, the night before the championship. The lights cut off in the we was like in the Borough Hall room, a conference room, and the
Mm,
lights cut off. It was quite a few guys working out. The lights cut off, so in a hotel, all the lights shut off. So once the lights shut off, I kept working out. A lot of guys stopped working out. I kept working out, and my coaches put the flashes on their phones. in the room. So while I'm running around the room trying to cut weight, you can just see my shadows on the wall. And then after I had won a tournament, they ended up like we was on the way back home because we had drove or whatever. So we was on the way back home. They're like, we're gonna call you Ghost, just from coming out of the blue, and then like the shadow on the wall. It was just like perfect. And then kind of my fighting style too.
Yeah, now at some point when you get like a video package and all that, you got to recreate that for the video package. That just sounds perfect, like perfectly cinematic. So my last question for you, wrap this up real quick. I'm not even going to ask you your prediction on if we get Errol Spence and Terrence Crawford. I kind of know who you would pick just on your background, but what do you think would be the biggest difference maker in that fight if it gets made, like the biggest intangible to affect the outcome?
Who's more dominant with the jabs?
Okay.
You know, distance. I would say the distance. Who finds the better distance, and you know who wins a jab battle.
Sounds good. Well, Frank, I appreciate your time and best of luck next week against Nunes. Appreciate you.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
No problem. Take care.